Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Safety. I'm your host, Dylan Sutherland from Protekta Safety Gear. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing industry experts to provide our audience with valuable insights on various categories of PPE. Topics will range from selection and standards to maintenance and care. This should ultimately assist you in selecting fit-for-purpose safety solutions for your site. From these discussions, we will create resources such as Toolbox Talk downloads and blogs, all of which will be available on our website, www.protekta.co.za, for download. Hi Niels, welcome. Quite exciting for me, get to talk to my boss. I think today we're going to get into, obviously, your technical background and your understanding from a PPE point. I think it's a lot more than just you run the company from a Protekta point. You've gotten quite deep into research and understanding, but before we jump into that, let's maybe take a step back, and if you can walk us through, what did your life look like before you got involved with Protekta?
Yeah, thanks for having me. We started a small biscuit business. So for about 14 years, we had to work it and learn on the run. So yeah, the biscuit business was very good for me from an experience point of view. And then I got the opportunity to join the safety business, and I think quite a few of that experience I took forward into the safety business. But yeah, the safety I've learned in basically from the bottom up. I knew nothing. I knew a little bit because we used gloves and we used Conti suits in the biscuit business.
So starting from gloves and Conti suits. But I mean, I think your expertise, and I mean, I know you're quite humble about it and you don't like showing people it necessarily, but you literally take stuff home and you test it on a weekend, and you'll throw acid on a Conti suit or burn it and make sure that you understand that topic. I think that's a huge contributor to what makes you technical in my perspective.
Yeah, it really helps if you're interested in a topic or interested in the thing that you work with. So for me, it's there's a lot of research done on anything that's in safety. And to understand it is to test it, because they can tell you it react in a certain way. But if you haven't seen it reacted in that way, then it's not, you don't believe in it, and that's the big thing for me, is to see how it reacts. What does it really do? And then you can talk with confidence from there.
I think it's actually just coming to me now that my general perspective on safety is it needs to be fit for purpose. It has to help the person we assisting, the client, make sure that they're appropriately protected. But I kind of just went along this, and I don't think I've realized that for 10 years being exposed to that kind of thinking, it's a huge contributor to that mindset. So from my side, it's a huge thank you, because I think that's led that direction. And it comes to the point of this podcast. I mean, you've been at Protekta substantially longer than me, obviously. You're running Protekta, so you're a lot more deeply rooted in it. But from my perspective, how I see Protekta being fit for purpose is we're not there to just sell something. We're not there to just give somebody whether it's a mask or a glove, just for the sake of making money. We really have this underlying belief that we're there to serve these people. We're there to make sure that if they take the appropriate PPE, they will be protected in the case of an event. How do you see Protekta sitting from a fit-for-purpose point of view?
Yeah, I think and to take it almost a little bit away from the real technical stuff, is I think in South Africa especially, we have one problem, and that is that PPE sometimes it's not comfortable, it's not user friendly, and you can do so much research about a product, but if somebody is not wearing it, if somebody is not comfortable with it, if somebody doesn't want to have it, there's almost no use. And for us, it's the person must want to wear it. And if it works for him, if it's something that he really want to have, to wear, to feel that it protects him, then you will get the level of protection that you need. And for Protekta, I think it's very important that we go to that length. And sometimes there's the misconception of, because it works, it's too expensive, so we just go for the cheap one. But for us, it's to understand, I think number one is to understand what the customer's problem is, and then to find something that will solve his problem in a way that it's really working for him. If it works for him, he will use it every day. That's basically.
100% agree, and I think it's a really good viewpoint, making sure people actually use safety, because they often see it as this thing that's against them, and safety's against them, and they just want to make them uncomfortable. So they're not going to put it on, they're not going to use it, it's not going to keep them safe. I think one thing that I really enjoy hearing from you is how you've really been in the trenches. I mean, we talk about, yes, you do your scientific research on the weekends, and you'll throw acid, and you'll sometimes come to the office with pool acid, and everyone's like, what are you doing? Because of testing PPE over the weekend. There was something that really sat with me in a point of, this is the lengths you go to. Can you walk us through how you created control in leather gloves? For me, that's a really cool story, and I think people can start understanding the level that you work at, and what, to your point, you want to make sure it's comfortable and everything, but there's another element to it, and making sure it's appropriate is quite a big component to that.
From the beginning, very privileged to visit factories and understand a bit how products is made. But one of the products that we have the biggest problems with was the leather gloves, aprons, and we couldn't understand why the one batch or the one order that we receive is good quality, the next one is a lower quality. There's always a difference in quality. What is the problem here? And then visiting some countries where this is manufactured, we start to understand what is some of the real problems. It then we came to the understanding that this product is not always bought from the richest or the best manufacturers out there. Everyone wants to sell something, so they tell you a story and you believe their story. So when we could see what they do is, for instance, to make a leather glove, you need a piece of leather. Leather is the most expensive part of the glove, and so they want to use that whole piece of leather. But they don't understand really what is the product doing. That's another point that I will come to later. And so for them it's just they put out of this piece of leather, they put it together. So what they will do is they will cut the big hand piece out of this leather, and then there's small pieces left over. But the small pieces on the side is normally the thin pieces. So they will put that thin pieces on the fingers. So they have quite a good protection on maybe the palm or the back of the hand, but on the fingers they have a very thin leather or a not good leather, because they want to use all of that. And so we then start to study it and went with the manufacturers and then write a spec for our product that we want, and which leather we want to use, and what part of the leather and what strength of the leather we want to use in each part of the product.
What's the What's the difference? I mean, leather's leather.
Yeah, when you get a piece of leather, especially the countries that we buy from, the leather has different qualities in the sense of if it's from the back of the animal, it's thicker, it's stronger. When it's from the belly of the animal, it's a bit weaker. The neck is also a fairly good leather. So the best example I probably have is from making aprons. They cut quite a big piece of the leather for an apron, and that's normally from the backside. So on the backside, so you have quite a strong apron. But then they now have the belly pieces left over, and they cut the belts of the apron from the belly pieces. So when you buy the apron, you have a very nice apron, good thickness. You wear it for 2 days and the belt break. Now the whole apron can't be used because the belt is broken, because it's used from the belly leather, which is the weaker leather. So in our case, we tend to buy extra pieces of back leather to make the belts from, so that we have a strong belt and a strong apron.
Cool. And then that would mean then same context with the gloves. So making sure that whatever I would assume the most harsh working components of a glove are fitted with the appropriate quality of leather, making sure that it's actually going to serve its purpose of protecting whoever's dealing with something hot, for instance.
Yeah, definitely. That is one thing that we had to change hard, and it was quite difficult to get the factory to understand that point. And so we had to make sure they understand these pieces of leather, especially the front of the glove is made of the back leather, so that where the most work is done from the glove, we have the strongest piece of leather that's covering that part.
Cool. And that's that full control of quality. I mean, that's making sure from the cow, essentially, that through this whole process, you've got the appropriate components or the appropriate pieces, making sure whoever the end user is gets the same quality, whether they buy today, 3 months, a year's time. And I think that's why it speaks big time to me. I think that's a really cool control to have in place and offer a client, because they've got that confidence in what you're supplying. Today we're going to get into more of your knitted hand protection. So the synthetic and nitrile and all the different names that you can have. I don't even know if nitrile, I know there's nitrile components, but I want to get into that because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of misunderstandings to how those gloves work. From a work at Heights point, we just get these gloves that are nice and easy to climb. So we kind of get grip more than protection. And I think that's a very basic view on it. So I want to get into that. We won't really get into the standards. I think there'll be a future episode where we acknowledge the standards. But I think if we can jump into the knitted gloves and get your thinking on that, because you've done a lot of testing there as well. So when it comes to knitted hand protection, what's the thought process? What should people be considering? When should they use it? If you can just give us a basic overview of hand protection from that point.
If you just allow me to give a little bit of background on knitted gloves, is before, say, around the 1980s, most gloves were made from leather. And leather was really good. Leather could give you protection against heat. It can give you puncture resistance. It could give you abrasion resistance. It was really a good product. The problem that we have, like with anything in the world, at the stage it became quite expensive to manufacture, so people is looking at other ways to do it. And they found then that they can make a knitted glove that have quite a lot of advantages, and not to a point also not really overtook leather gloves. Leather gloves still have some place. But then, to give you an example, if you see a leather glove, it is stitched by hand. It's cut by a machine that's driven by somebody. That's one machine, one person. It's a sewing machine and one person. So to do a line of leather gloves, you need 50 sewing machines with 50 people. What the knitted glove brought is that one person could look after 50 knitting machines. So the manufacturing cost came down a lot. And with that then is we had to figure out how to make the knitted glove to help us to protect against whatever we can find as a risk. So the development of the knitted glove have sort of start, I think, by some of the big companies that develop good materials. Like you get the Kevlar, Aramid, Dyneema is all products that's developed by companies with good research budgets, and for a while that materials could be used in a knitted glove well. But obviously that also started to become a bit more expensive, and so from there's quite a bit of research into to make the product user-friendly at a price that you can afford it, and that it will protect you at the risk that it's there. So the development, as I will say, from the 80s was gradually, and it's now becoming faster and faster, like any development in the world. It's really developing fast.
Cool. So just before we carry on with that conversation, I think we're not going to go into them, like I mentioned earlier, the different standards, but those risks you're talking about, that's your cut protection, that's your puncture resistance, it's your abrasion. That's right. Is that the risk that you're talking about that these gloves are designed to stop?
Yeah. A normal knitted glove is get rated according to that 4 measurements, but there's as we get more sophisticated in understanding a risk, we also try to develop something. So you get these days, you get impact resistance, you get anti-vibration, things that was not really looked into before. The dexterity of a glove, you talk about the research. I've done a bit of research on cut, and you can get a very thin glove that can protect you against the cut, but that doesn't mean it cannot hurt the tissue in your hand still. So there's quite a few things to look into it, and to just say, yes, I have a glove that's cut resistant and I can now protect myself against it.
Cool. You've touched on an important point, and I'd assume that the dexterity was also quite a large contributor for these knitted gloves being preferred over leather. Because again, like you said earlier, if you need to pick something up and you can't do it with that PPE, chances are you're not going to use it. You're just going to take the glove off and do your job.
Yeah, it's what happened a lot of times is, and where your injuries is happening, is when you want to do something, you're not 100% comfortable, take it off the glove and then do it. I think you find it quite in your industry, the work at height also. So the things that been looked at is definitely comfort versus function. So if you have good comfort, you want to wear it. If you have good dexterity, it's easier to wear. If the glove fit nicely, then it doesn't bother you to have the glove on your hand. If you wear a glove and it's sweaty, then it's not. You don't always want to wear it. If your glove get too dirty, so there's a lot of factors that can influence what makes that you want to wear the product. So the knitted gloves help a lot to develop in that direction. We must understand leather can also be manufactured to a point of very much comfort, like golf gloves or things like that. But still, I don't think it's the one against the other. It's just both have their place at the moment.
Cool. So we'll put it at your leather is more hard, durable, probably a lot of heat. Probably knitted goes towards the heat now, but like you said, the technology is advancing and it's more doing small little jobs with your hand, being able to make sure that you can still function while being appropriately protected.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. We can put it like that because like in puncture resistance, a leather glove can give you a certain amount of puncture resistance, I think with fairly comfortability, where the synthetic puncture resistance is still hard. A glove that's not friendly to wear. It do the job better, but to wear it all day is hard.
Okay, so now we get into the technical or the technicalities of these knitted gloves. So one of the fundamental differences is obviously it's a textile, it's a fabric that is what it's manufactured from, but it also has this layer. And again, from a work at Heart's Point, the layer underneath the glove is designed to create grip. Is that what it's for? Is it purely just from a grip? Because leather doesn't have anything like that on it.
A knitted glove is basically two components. The one is a knitted shell, and then it also gets dipped then into material that cover the glove on the basically on the palm side, which then give you protection from. And I think it started off with grip because if you just have the knitted shell, it can slip. It's not really a glove yet. It's the moment you put what we call a coating on it, then it become a glove. I think that's the two components. Yeah.
Is all of that coating the same? Do they all work the same, or is there other considerations we should take, or the audience should take if they're selecting a glove?
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 different coatings that you get on gloves these days. So there's latex was, I'll say, the first one, and latex still have quite a place. Then there's nitrile rubber that you can put on there. Then there's the polyurethane help you to get very thin layer on the glove, which is good for dexterity. Then your nitrile is more for resistance against oils and wet circumstances, and then latex is more for really good grip in dry circumstances. Latex, when you get wet, it's quite slippery.
Okay, so there is definitely a decision that should be taken into account when selecting your knitted hand protection just from a grip point. What about the material that's actually used for the knit? I think you called it the shell of the glove?
Yeah, the most common material to use is polyester. So it's a polyester yarn. They also use nylon from time to time. But it's a polyester yarn, and that yarn is basically there to make a shell that in the form of a glove, and then you dip that into the dip that then will give you the protection. Now, the development these days is that the yarn that's used now is developed in very different materials also. So the yarn is not there only anymore to build a shell. It can also give you protection, especially in cut and heat protection. The yarn is very important.
So that would be down to how they've manufactured the yarn, I would assume. They've added certain components. Is that right?
For instance, there was a material, as I said in the beginning, that was developed for cut. That was, it's called Dyneema. Then, in experimenting with other materials, they was able to sew into the yarn. They sew in stainless steel, tungsten, or glass fiber. That gives different options. To have stainless steel so thin and bendable that you can put it into a glove, it's really something. So the materials that the yarn is made from have developed immensely. Yeah.
And if they put stainless steel in, is that safe if it's in the yarn?
For every solution, there's a new problem. So when you wear the glove for a while, and it can happen that the stainless steel now break and that cut into or stick into your finger. So it can also then eventually damage you. So the other problem was with glass fiber, that's not friendly to any hand, so that also when it breaks, people can also be allergic to it. The big development at the moment is to basically get rid of that problem. So if there's a way to develop a yarn that don't have steel in it or don't have glass fiber in it, it will help us to make a more safe, a more user-friendly glove. Yeah, and that is happening. There's quite a few companies that have now get to a point where they can reach the same levels of resistance with not having steel in the glove. Obviously, that is more expensive. The glass fiber and the stainless steel is more cheaper option, so it's still going around, but the development is away from that. Also, the testing method for cut resistance was influenced quite a lot by the steel. That's when they tested with a round blade that was spinning, so steel on steel blunted the blade. So, and then the test method was not so good anymore, so I had to change test methods to accommodate for that. But yeah, the development is really, it's mind-blowing.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope this episode added value to you. If you are experiencing any safety challenges on your sites and require any additional information, please do leave us a message on LinkedIn via Protekta Safety Gear's page, or alternatively follow the link below and share a message with us, because maybe it can create value or valuable conversation for future episodes. Be sure to also follow us on LinkedIn. There will be some valuable information shared from today's discussion.